up as a kid, yeah. All a nigga wanna have was a Burberry scarf and $3 in my pocket. Instead I got beat with a switch, but I don't give a fuck, but it's on my body. Scars all up on me, but I run around from.
So everybody, it's JT Sports Match, you guys, with another video. This video, I'm here with my Baltimore Ravens 2020 wide receiver preview. Going to be previewing the current wide receivers on the Baltimore Ravens roster. Before I get into the video, make sure that you guys go ahead, like the video, and subscribe to the channel because I upload NFL videos and XFL videos daily. And when you subscribe to the channel, you get me one subscriber closer to my goal of 10,000 subscribers. Now, when you look at this Ravens receiving core, it is one of the biggest question marks on this team. Because the Ravens last year were really young, really inexperienced. You saw a lot of drops in a couple of games. Like one game that really pops out to me is that Tennessee game. When they lost in the divisional round, there was a lot of drops by the wide receivers. Then it was a regular season game. It was the game against Seattle. Now, although Baltimore won that game, it was a good amount of drops as well. And that's what happens when you have a young group of wide receivers. You're going to have a lot of drops there, a lot of miscommunication. So going into year two for a lot of these guys, or for a lot of these younger guys, who is going to be the guy who ends up breaking out? Who is going to be the guy who ends up emerging at wide receiver for the Baltimore Ravens other than Marquise Brown? Now, we already know about Marquise Brown. Marquise Brown is going to be the #1 wide receiver on this Ravens offense, and he's pretty much going to be one of the primary targets in this offense alongside of tight end Mark Andrews. Now, Marquise Brown is expected to have a breakout season by a lot of people. Last year, he had a pretty nice rookie season, had 584 receiving yards, 46 receptions, caught 7 touchdown passes, and was averaging 12.7 yards per reception. And when you look at Marquise Brown in this day and age of the NFL, it's all about speed. It's all about having the elite deep threat, and that's what Marquise Brown has potential to be. He has potential to be in that category of guys like Deshaun Jackson and Tyreek Hill, some of the better deep threats in the NFL. And he kind of got held back. Like his rookie season started off really fast. Like he had that great performance against Arizona and Miami, but he lost a little bit of momentum around the midway point due to him battling injuries. So if he's able to stay fully healthy, I think he's going to have a big season. I think he could end up having a Pro Bowl caliber season. And I think he easily is going to be able to go over 1,000 yards. And when you look at Marquise Brown in this offense, if Marquise Brown gets going, he ends up being as good as what we think he should be, then he's going to open up a lot of opportunities for the rest of these Baltimore Ravens wide receivers, because a lot of defenses are going to be too busy trying to key in to stop Marquise Brown, and that's going to open up room for a lot of these younger guys to get, a little bit more opportunities and a little bit more, opportunities to shine, with the defenses keying in on, Mark Andrews and Marquise Brown. Now we got Willie Snead. Now, Willie Snead is pretty much the more experienced guy when it comes to this wide receiver room that the Ravens have. He's the guy on this roster who has pretty much more experience than the majority of these guys that's playing right now. Now, last season, he had 339 receiving yards, 31 receptions, and 5 touchdowns. And he was averaging 10.9 yards per catch. Now, Willie Snead doesn't really have, blazing speed. He's not really going to burn the defense over the top of things like that. But he's pretty reliable. Like, he is the Ravens wide receiver that can run all the routes underneath. He can pretty much do the dirty work, if you want to call it that. That he can do all the work underneath. He can, run your slant routes, run your drags, run everything underneath, basically. He has really good hands as well. So I think his role in this Ravens offense is pretty much going to be, he's pretty much going to take, everything that is given to him underneath, basically. Now, you're going to have Marquise Brown taking the top off the defense. You're going to have Willie Snead doing damage in the middle of the field. Now, you got Miles Boykin. Miles Boykin is the guy who a lot of Ravens fans are really having high hopes for. Now, last season, his rookie season, wasn't all that great. He didn't really get a lot of action. He only had 198 receiving yards, 13 receptions, and 3 touchdowns. Now, he was averaging 15.2 yards per reception. So, he was making some big plays. He was a really good big play deep threat, and he's a deep threat like Marquise Brown, but in a different way. Like Marquise Brown is a deep threat because of his speed, but Miles Boykin is more of a deep threat because of his physicality and his ability to come down with those 50-50 and those contested balls. So I think Miles Boykin most likely will be the third wide receiver on this roster, at least from the depth chart perspective. And he's also a really good target inside the red zone. When you get inside the red zone, you already got to account for Mark Andrews, and you got to account for, Lamar Jackson's scrambling ability and Mark Ingram, but you also got to account for Miles Boykin. And Miles Boykin, I feel like he could become a really good red zone target for the Ravens as well. So Miles Boykin is a guy to keep your eye out for. Now we got Chris Moore. Now, I'm not really expecting a lot of Chris Moore. I think Chris Moore I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up getting released, because he only had 3 receptions, 21 receiving yards last year. He didn't really do all that much for the Baltimore Ravens. He also had some pretty big drops as well. So, I'm not really expecting a lot of Chris Moore. Does he have a little bit of upside? Yeah, but I'm not really expecting that much out of Chris Moore this season. Next up, we have rookie Devonte Duvernay out of the University of Texas. Now, he was drafted in the 3rd round of this past year's NFL draft. And when you look at Devonte Duvernay, he is basically a halfback at wide receiver, basically. He is like 5'10", 200 pounds, basically, and he's built like a halfback. He is very good after the catch. He has very solid hands, but he's not really all that great when it comes to, in terms of being a deep threat. Like, he kind of struggles to locate the football. He kind of struggles to make adjustments to the football when it comes to, throwing the football deep and making those deep ball adjustments. So he's more of a yak wide receiver. He's a guy who's going to give you a lot of yards with the ball in his hands. He's a guy who's a threat to take it to the house. Like, he can turn a 5-yard pass into a 60-yard touchdown. And I'm really intrigued in Devonte Duvernay, because a lot of Ravens fans think that Devonte Duvernay is going to have like a great season. But he still has a good amount of competition that he's going to have to overcome if he does want to get on the field and does want to have an impact and does want to have some significant playing time. So he has a couple of guys ahead of him. Now, I really like Devonte Duvernay. I think Devonte Duvernay reminds me a lot of Curtis Samuel from the Carolina Panthers, because they both have that, running back kind of build to them. So Devonte Duvernay, really interested to see how his rookie season turns out for the Ravens. Next up, we have Jaleel Scott. He's going into his 2nd year. Jaleel Scott, I really don't see him having that much of an impact in his Ravens wide receiver passing game. Maybe I think he is probably going to be like a special teamer guy, but I'm not really expecting that much out of Jaleel Scott this year. Now we have a guy who I really love a lot, James Proche. He was drafted in the 6th round by the Ravens out of SMU, and he was one of the best wide receivers in college football last year. And the reason why I like James Proche so much is that he plays bigger than his size. Now, he isn't all that big, but he plays like he's 6'4" and 6'5". And this guy is really, every week he was getting like 50-50 balls, contested catches in traffic for SMU. He was a really good deep threat for SMU as well. Now, the thing with James Proche is his route running. Now, his route running is a lot to be desired. Has to improve. His route running is a little bit more rounded. He runs his routes rounded. And when you're a wide receiver, you don't want to run your routes rounded. You want to run your routes out of angle. You want to run sharp routes. And the reason why it's so important to run sharp routes is because when you run sharp routes at angles, it's hard for defensive backs to get into a play. Like, say, for example, you're running a slant route. You got to run your slant route out of angle, because if you don't run your slant route out of angle and you run your slant route kind of rounded, it allows defensive back to get back into the play and allows them to have a better chance of making the play on the ball. So that's why it's really important to make sure that you run all your routes at an angle and you run short routes. So James Proche has to improve that part of his game. Have to get a sip of water here. So James Proche is a guy who I really like a lot. I like him a little bit more than I like Devonte Duvernay, to be honest. I think James Proche, if all honesty, I think he can have a bigger impact this year in his rookie season than Devonte Duvernay. I know a lot of Ravens fans may get a little bit upset with that, but I like James Proche a lot. Next up, we have Antoine Wesley, who was on the Ravens practice squad in 2019. Now, I thought Antoine Wesley was going to end up making the Baltimore Ravens 53-man roster to start the 2019 season, but it didn't end up going out like that. But, I think Antoine Wesley, I think he could crack the 53-man roster because, like I said, the wide receiver position for the Baltimore Ravens is basically wide open between Marquise Brown and Willie Snead. Other than those guys, it's still pretty much anybody's game to, who could be one of the starters at that wide receiver 3 spot for the Ravens. So, I think Antoine Wesley is a little bit overlooked in terms of this wide receiver crop for the Baltimore Ravens. So I'm really interested to watch him. Next up, we have rookies Jalen Moore and Michael Darius. Michael Darius is an undrafted free agent out of Georgetown, and Jalen Moore is an undrafted free agent out of Tennessee. Not really expecting much out of those two guys. So this is it for my Baltimore Ravens 2020 wide receiver preview. Let me know what you guys think about it down in the comment section down below. Make sure that you guys like the video and subscribe to the channel for more NFL videos and content. And thanks for watching.